YouTube found a community, Evergreen Blueshoes fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we're here today to chat about one of the most bizarre records I've heard in quite a long time. This is Evergreen Blueshoes, the Ballad of Evergreen Blueshoes. Check out this cover. It's pixelated, so YouTube, don't get mad at me, but it's a promo copy. This is a fascinating record. So it's pretty much spearheaded by a guy named Skip Batten. And Skip, you might know better from joining the Byrds later on, which is kind of the reason why this project disintegrated. Skip and his buddies in the music industry were getting tired of being session musicians, which, you know, it can be kind of a rough life because you're getting paid like a salary wage and you're not getting the recognition that the stars get. So it's understandable. And in 1967, he wanted to get some of his friends and start a new group. And so they started an early version of this band, which included a drummer that would eventually join the Doobie Brothers, but he left. Anyways, they really created something magical, infusing a lot of genres together. Not only do you get moments of psychedelic rock and sunshine pop, but you also get really random things, like it sounds like you're walking through a Renaissance fair. There's really bizarre Baroque pop moments on this thing. They cover Poe's The Raven. This album is literally all over the shop, and you know, as they were playing shows at that time, they were building up quite a sizable audience. People were really digging this stuff, and this little tiny label named Amos Records decided to pick them up, fund their record, and help them get off the ground. And this is the record they made. And you know, for a debut album, it doesn't say their name or the songs anywhere on it, which is a great way to promote your band. But instead, they did it in like a upside down and backwards digipack style, so it opens like from the back. And then you get like what this should have been the album cover. It says the name on it. And then you got the guys who played on it, song names, and that's it. That's where the story stops. The opening track on this record, Life's Railway to Heaven, you're instantly introduced to this bizarre world of Evergreen Blueshoes, and it literally sounds like you're walking through a groovy psychedelic Renaissance fair with the most peculiar ponderings being, you know, sort of riffed off at you, stream of conscious style. But then eventually, things start to rock a little bit more. You hear the smiles in their voices as they sing, and it eventually becomes like a proper rock song, for lack of a better explanation. It's a groovy, chill rocker that segues so seamlessly into the next cut, which is a Dylan cover, Walking Down the Line. A really spirited take with good chunky guitar leads, organ bleeds, some spunky drums, and a really ripping guitar solo. But you know, you're wondering if it's still the same band from that first, 30-second intro with that weird flute. It was like you're just walking around the Ren Fair. It's a very bizarre intro, and it happens a few times throughout this record. But one thing you'll also note is that each song blends into the next. It's like one long jam for each side. And it is really cool, but it's also a little bit hard to figure out when one track starts and the other one stops. Obviously, you just look at the bands on the record and figure it out from there, but Line Out follows that one. And again, kind of more of a transitional piece that goes into Amsterdam in 1968. And I can really hear like the 1969 version of the Rascals doing this one. It's got that sort of blue-eyed soul feel, but some wonderful guitar picking and really cheerful. It's really cheerful, groovy rocker, I would say, with some good happy-go-lucky vocals. You know, even with the story they're telling, you get sucked into the vibe and the energy, which is easy to do throughout most of this record, I would say. Everything's Fine Right Now is literally just exactly what you think this song would be about. Like, things are bad, and then they weren't bad, and now it's better now. Kind of a cut and dry, cut and paste song. It's definitely, you know, about spreading that sunshine. Like, things are going to be okay, things are going to be all right. It's exactly what you would think it would be. But it's also, I mean that in a sincere way, because you get that energy, you get that feeling of like, cool, things are all right, and this music reflects that. It's a happy-go-lucky kind of song. We need that. Which then leads to probably the weirdest cover of Johnny B. Goode I've ever heard in my entire life. It starts off with this like rumination about the concept of man, if you will, and that's really good acoustic guitars that sound almost like Canned Heat before falling into this sludgy, murky, clunky take of this classic song. It's definitely original, definitely unique, and it's one of those head scratcher moments to take one of the most iconic rock and roll songs and completely turn it on its head, which I think is what makes it fascinating. Side 2 is where I would say the jamming picks up more than side 1, and I mean that in a loose generalization because the songs obviously flow into each other just like the first side does, but I feel like they expand their sound more into almost a straight up rock feel. Obviously, there's moments where they get a little bit more experimental with the whole Ren Fair flute thing and the talking, of course, but for instance, we open up with the Hedgehog song, which is kind of about like, when things can get prickly in a relationship. Things feel comfy and cool, but then once in a while, it gets prickly and uncomfortable. The Raven is a very Season of the Witch, Donovan-esque take on Edgar Allan Poe's classic tale. It's really cool. The chirpy organ is wonderful. That searching bass is a groove. The whole thing feels a little eerie, but a little interesting. And I think that's kind of what makes, Season of the Witch an interesting song as well, or captivating listen if you want to call it that. But yeah, this one blends really nicely into the next cut, Mrs. Cohen's Little Boy, which is just a groove, a jam that comes out of the Raven. And then Moon Over Olympus does a really good job of dynamics. For the first time in this album, you have the electric instruments kind of taking some quieter moments and really showing off their strength in those moments and then exploding on the more louder ones. But it's the articulation on this one allows for them to glow really well in the quieter moments, which I really enjoy. In the last couple of cuts, Jewish Tea House and the Everblue Express really show off their jamming technique and just how tight they were with each other. There's a lot of phrases here that follow like, a certain riff, and they're all playing it in time together so perfectly. So I think where I'm trying to go with all this is like, while the band, yes, is technically proficient and fascinating to listen to, I don't know how much as a listener that translates to repeated listens or memorable performances. And I don't mean that in like a slight. It's just like, there aren't a lot of things you can like bob your head along to and like sing along to a chorus with. And that's not for, I'm not trying to say that in terms of like, oh, it's art, you don't have to bob along and sing along to everything. I understand that. But like, if you're a band, you want people to enjoy your music and have it stuck in your brain. I've played this album so many times, and I feel like it just goes in one ear and out the other. Like, I understand it; they're super talented, and I understand the creativity behind it and how much they probably enjoyed making this. And maybe I'd have been there. Maybe if I was there in the '60s, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But that being said, I still find it interesting to listen to, and I do come back to it. But like, it just doesn't stick with me for some reason, and maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm completely missing the point here, but. With that being said, I'd probably give this thing a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I do think the skill is there. Like, they're obviously extremely talented players. But as far as the project having enough gas to keep going, I don't think there would have been a second album. Honestly, I think, it wasn't meant to be a long-form project. I think Skip going off to do the Birds and the guys breaking off and doing their own projects was what was supposed to happen. So, as a curio, it's fascinating as a document of the 60s in terms of what could be produced in terms of calling it pop music, but having all these influences and all these genres blended together. That makes this alone worth sussing out. So yeah, probably a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it is a really interesting listen. So if you do find a copy, pick it up. But this is the Ballad of Evergreen Blueshoes. Yeah, what a weird little album. What a weird little album. My name is Giggens. Thank you so much for watching this review. If you liked it, let me know. Have you heard about this album? Let me know in the comments below. And if anybody in the band watches this thing, you're super talented. I'm not trying to slight your record. It's just my opinion. And my opinion doesn't mean anything. I'm just some dude on the internet. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care of yourselves. See you later. Bye-bye.